everyone, thanks for joining us for this deep dive. You sent us this piece by Jaime Hoerricks called Knowledge as Wonder, A Journey Beyond Rationalism. And, well, we had to talk about it.
It's such a fascinating look at what it really means to know something.
Yeah.
Not just like having facts, but what knowledge really is.
Yeah, and it starts out, talking about Peter Green's work, which we both really respect.
Oh, absolutely.
Green, who argues so strongly about the need for content knowledge, especially in this age of AI where it's so tempting to think, oh, well, we can just Google everything or let AI figure it out.
Right, exactly. Like, why do we even need to learn anything anymore?
Yeah, and Green's like, no, that's dumb, that's wrong.
It misses the whole point of learning.
Yeah, and Hoerricks seems to agree with Green there, at least at the beginning.
Oh, definitely. They start off acknowledging, how crucial content knowledge is for critical thinking, for really being able to evaluate information. Not just taking everything at face value.
And Green's argument about writing really stands out, too.
Oh, yeah, totally. He's saying writing is thinking.
Exactly.
You can't write if you don't know anything, You have to have that knowledge base to even start forming thoughts.
And that's where Hoerricks takes this really interesting turn,
Oh, yeah.
It's like they're saying, okay, yes, content knowledge is super important, but there's this whole other dimension to knowing that's like so personal.
It's more than just practical.
Yeah.
It's not about like climbing a knowledge ladder to get somewhere.
Yeah.
It's more like being in a forest.
Yeah.
Just being immersed in it.
Yeah. Hoerricks uses this phrase, felt knowledge.
Ooh, I love that.
It's like knowledge that isn't just, in your head.
It's in your heart.
Yeah, it's like it's part of you.
Like in their poems, like A Stroll to the Mailbox or The Solitary Forager's Time.
Yeah, there's this deep connection to memory, to myths, to belonging.
You really feel it.
And Hoerricks contrasts that with AI, which is so interesting because AI can process information, in ways we can't even imagine.
Right. It can write. It can translate. It can do all these amazing things.
It can't feel.
It doesn't have that spark, that joy of discovery, a connection to something deeper.
And this is where it gets really interesting because Hoerricks brings up this whole thing about the fairies.
Right.
And at first it seems like a total left turn, like what do fairies have to do with knowledge?
Right. But it actually makes so much sense.
Yeah, Hoerricks talks about being drawn to fairy tales as a kid.
Not as escapism, though, right?
Right, it was more like a recognition.
Like seeing themselves reflected in these stories.
And it wasn't just any fairy tales, They specifically mention Artemis Fowl.
Oh, yeah, classic.
And later on books like Fearsome Fairies and Celtic Weird.
It's that folklore that really draws them in.
And when you think about it, the Fae, they have all these characteristics that resonate with a lot of neurodivergent folks,
Right. They're often living apart from human society, following their own rules connected to nature.
Wary of human constructs, existing at the edges.
And for a lot of autistic and trans people, that's not just a preference. It's like a lifeline.
It's how they understand the world.
And that quote from Artemis Fowl is so perfect. Let us proceed under the assumption that the fairy folk do exist, and that I am not a gibbering moron.
I love that quote.
It's like saying, hey, there are other ways of knowing, other ways of being, and they're just as valid.
And then there's that line about crazy people being more interesting than sane ones,
Maybe it's because they see things differently.
They're not bound by the same rules, the same limitations.
So you can see the magic in the world.
Right, and Hoerricks talks about the Fae as mirrors,
Reflecting that experience of being different, of being on the outside.
And they represent a different way of relating to knowledge, too.
Not about control, but about coexistence,
About listening and being present instead of dominating.
And that leads into this idea of creating temples of knowing.
Yeah, these personal spaces where you can really dive deep into your interests and passions.
Safe spaces where you can just be yourself.
And Hoerricks talks about their 14 bookshelves.
Oh, wow.
Filled with books collected over a lifetime.
That's amazing.
It's like a physical representation of their journey of learning,
And that first book they got as an adult learner, it was like a turning point.
Yeah, and then it just grew from there.
Books and toys and plushies, all these things that bring comfort and joy.
It's like a sanctuary.
And their poem, The Reader's Nook, really captures that feeling,
That sense of discovery, that peace that comes from being surrounded by the things you love.
And even that detail about the untouched mound in the field. It's like a respect for the past, for forgotten things.
For different ways of knowing.
And so Hoerricks is saying, we need to remember that there's more to knowledge than just utility.
Than just what we can get out of it.
It's about belonging to something bigger than ourselves.
It's about resistance, too.
Resisting that pressure to be productive all the time.
To justify everything we do in economic terms.
It's about resisting erasure,
Like saying, hey, our ways of knowing are valid, too.
And those stories, those facts, those patterns that we connect with, they're like portals,
To wonder, to memory, to connection.
And Hoerricks ends with such beautiful imagery.
Yeah, the poems as berries on a moss-covered stone.
Offerings to unseen beings, to forgotten ways.
And writing as trails.
Yeah.
Inviting us to wander, to explore.
To share that journey with others.
Dreaming as a glade.
Just a peaceful place to be, to listen.
And that final thought about being fey-touched,
Maybe remembering something we were meant to remember.
It's just so evocative.
It leaves you with a sense of possibility.
So yeah, thank you for sharing this piece with us. It's really got us thinking about what knowledge means.
And how it can be so much more than just facts and figures.
It can be a source of wonder, of connection, of resistance.
And so we want to leave you with this question,
Think about your own relationship with knowledge.
Is there something that you're passionate about that feels more like inhabiting a forest than climbing a ladder?
What are those unexpected connections that shape your learning journey?
Maybe you want to check out more of Jaime Hoerricks' work or revisit Peter Green's arguments.
Or even dive into the world of Fey folklore.
Keep exploring, keep learning, keep nurturing your own temples of knowing.
Thanks for joining us.
See ya.